Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Wine's World, and we are now out of my birthday week and back into Lent. And this past Sunday was originally called Passion Sunday in the Catholic and Episcopal churches, and the period from now until Good Friday used to be called Passion Tide, with next Sunday being Palm Sunday and the week from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday being Holy Week. So we're getting back into the Lenten notions here, and today's topic I've called highs and lows, because I talked a little bit before and I want to talk a little bit more today about the idea of fasting and feasting, where by fasting, by reducing your either food intake maybe, or alcohol or smoking or some other thing, sugar maybe, I don't know, that fasting, and then feasting when you eat meat and and all the other glorious things that you love and so forth. And the idea being that fasting makes the feasting better, that if you don't take something in that you enjoy for a long period of time, and then you do take it in at a certain point, then it tastes so much better and you enjoy it so much more because you've been deprived of it. Versus the idea that you should just indulge all the time, which some people do, or you should abstain all the time, which some people also do. So I want to just go over this notion of highs and lows in life, in general, not just in terms of Lent, but in general. So let's get started on that. So the place I want to start is a very famous book by Aldous Huxley called Brave New World. I'm not sure whether people read it very much anymore, but when I was in school in the 60s, it was a common book for people to be assigned, and it had its moment in the sun, I guess. The novel, if you don't know about it, basically concerns a society that is completely controlled and programmed so that everybody is happy all the time. And that means that there's either no pain or very limited pain. I mean, I guess people would get into accidents anyway, but among other things, nobody gave birth. They had sex freely, but they were all on birth control, so that nobody ever gave birth. Instead, they contributed eggs and sperm to a central laboratory that paired them together and decided what quality they were, and they were ranged from alpha, beta, gamma, all the way to epsilon, and they were bred in the laboratory, and then they were programmed according to their classification. So the alphas ended up being technicians and professionals and so forth, and all the way down to epsilon, which basically like janitors and floor sweepers and so forth, and they were all happy with the place that they had in life, and they had a drug called soma, so that if they were ever unhappy, they could take soma, and they would be happy, and so life was just calm and even all across the board. And one of the protagonists in the book is a man who is an alpha, who somehow or other, either his conditioning or his genetics or something were maladjusted, and so he's not happy, and he can't be happy, and so it follows him and also another individual who comes into the story from outside, who is not part of this brave new world, who was born to a mother who was part of it, but she got lost at one point and ended up getting pregnant and giving birth to him, and he grew up in what was, I guess, kind of an indigenous society in southwestern United States, where none of this happened, and he's brought into this brave new world and hates it. You know, he's used to doing things like whipping himself when he's he's done something wrong, or when he needs to fortify himself, and the whole point about the book is that if you live a life that is just even and tranquil and serene, happy maybe all the time, then you basically have no experience. that it's not so very dissimilar from a notion that I had a long time ago when I talked about a world that is all one color. Now, if everything in the world, literally everything, is one color, then you're blind, because our sight is based on the fact that things are different in color, so that you can tell a bottle from a table or a knife or what have you, because they are different in color. You couldn't even detect motion if everything were the same color. It would be just the same as completely switching the light off. You can't see anything because you have nothing to compare it with. And so Brave New World had no highs and lows, had no ups and downs. Everything was equal, and therefore you can reasonably speculate that that's a life that has no emotion, no feeling, and so you can't really be happy because you can't be unhappy. You've got nothing to compare it to, and that's, you know, the long the long and short of the whole book. I mean, if you haven't read it, go read it, because it is quite fascinating. But that's the underlying principle, is that you need to have highs and lows, so that the highs that you experience are true highs, because you can contrast them with lows that are true lows. Well, that's part of the point of the ecclesiastical cycle, that you have fasts and feasts. There are times when you are alone, by yourself, contemplative, you deny yourself things that you would normally enjoy, and so forth, to go inwards. And that means that when you go outwards, when you meet with other people, when you go to a party maybe, or go to church or whatever, communicate with other people, have lunch with them together, and so forth, that it's a higher experience, because you can contrast it with that solitary time of denial. And I think that's a reasonable hypothesis, that that the lows that you experience are important in order to energize the highs that you experience. And I have to say that during the pandemic, I did experience something like that, where everything was on an even keel. Didn't get to see people, didn't get to go out, didn't get to do much except my own writing. The only highs and lows that I experienced on an irregularity was day and night. Although day and night is important. If we didn't have any night, we wouldn't understand what day is. I'm also experiencing fairly constant temperatures too. Pretty much every day the high is somewhere around 30 to 32 degrees, and every night is about 27, 28 degrees. So, so my life is to some extent even in that way, and it does have an impact on my consciousness, on my sense of self, on my feelings, on my consciousness in general. Now, I'm partly thinking about this notion of highs and lows right now because we're in Lent, and I'm thinking about fasting and feasting. But it's something that I've had ideas about for a long time when it comes to both music and drama, because in the Western tradition, highs and lows are essential for both music and drama. And I've been watching a lot of Asian dramas recently on Netflix because I've had some spare time. And I'm a little bit troubled by the highs and lows of those dramas. Let me expand on this a little bit. In music, particularly in the classical vein, going all the way back to the Baroque, to Johann Sebastian Bach, then on forward to Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, and so forth. The highs and lows are really important. Highs and lows of volume, for example, where a piece may start off very, very soft, and then you'll have crescendos and violent moments, and then getting soft again. Also, modulation of keys with different feelings and so forth, that you'll start off in a particular key and move off into various realms, but then always come back to home. And so there's a sense of tension, a building of tension, of moving away from your comfort zone, from your center point, but ultimately coming back there. So that if you know anything about classical music, you'll know that a symphony or a sonata will always be indicated as being in the key of such and such, in the key of B flat or in the key of A minor or something like that. That's home base. That's where you start. That's where you feel comfortable. That's where you stray away from and ultimately come back to. And in drama, you have this sense that here's a situation. Sometimes the situation is not good. Sometimes it's pretty good. But drama is raised by building tension. The classical sitcom is boy meets girl, boy falls in love with girl. They have a falling out or a problem or a disagreement, and then eventually that gets resolved and they come back together again and everything's happy. They live happily ever after. Classic fairy tale stuff too, of venturing out from home, creating all kinds of situations and problems, getting them solved and returning home. And for a long time I was okay with that and I'm just not anymore. I'm okay I'm okay with some really, really classic dramas, like I'll watch Hamlet or Macbeth or Romeo and Juliet because I know the outcome. I've read and experienced either by being in them myself or by watching them multiple times. So I know everything that's going on, and all I'm interested in is the particular ways in which the plays have been acted out, the scenes and whatnot. That's fine. I know what's going to happen. I don't like dramas anymore where I don't know what's going to happen, and I particularly do not like dramas where things go wrong immediately, particularly if there's a betrayal or if somebody has been particularly hideous. So I just don't like it. I don't find it entertaining to see people betraying other people or seeing a couple misunderstand each other and falling out of love because they've misunderstood each other. Now it could be because I'm getting old. I just had my birthday, and I don't like those life experiences as I've experienced them, so I don't find them entertaining anymore. But what's the alternative? Well, there is an alternative. In music, in Southeast Asia, where I live now, there is a long tradition of music which goes by the generic name of gamelan music. Gamelan is actually a Javanese word for an orchestra made up of various instruments of bronze. They're all struck. They're gongs and kettles of different pitches and like xylophone and so forth. And the music that introduces each of my episodes here is Cambodian gamelan. And what you notice about it is that it doesn't stray away from a home key or get louder and softer. It just flows. It just goes on and on and on continuously. And in fact, if you sit long enough, you find that it cycles. So it's sort of like a circular river, if you like. It's just serene all the way from beginning to end. And there is a ton of music from Java, Bali, Cambodia, Thailand, all over Southeast Asia that is of this sort. And the pieces are all different, but they all have that same flowing quality. In Western music, there are a few composers who've kind of gone along the same lines. Philip Glass is perhaps the most famous for having music that is the same, a little bit different. But and so it doesn't quite go like gamelan music in that it doesn't just repeat itself. But he's got something of the same quality. And in drama, not so much, although there have been a few dramatists who've been playing with the idea, but it never quite works out. Like, for example, in the series Seinfeld, which has as its tag that it's a sitcom about nothing. Well, it's not about nothing. It's about social relations. And I'm an anthropologist, so if you start saying that social relations are nothing, then I'm going to take umbrage, take offense at the idea that social relations are about nothing. Seinfeld is all about social relations. It's all about the interplay of Kramer and George and Elaine and Seinfeld himself, all their interactions. That's not nothing. And there are highs and lows. Elaine and Seinfeld and George all have relationships. Most of them crash and burn. And George has a job or several jobs, and they also crash and burn in various ways. So things do happen, and so there is tension, even though it's not the same kind of tension as you find in other sitcoms, but it's still tension. I think James Joyce may be closer to the mark with a kind of stream of consciousness writing in which like nothing particular happens, but he's still also talking about social relations. So I'm wondering out loud and don't know if there's a good answer to this, whether one could possibly write a minimalist novel that is the sort of dramatic or the literary equivalent of gamelan music, where things just flow, where there's no tension, where there's no disagreement. Now, you would be perfectly right to argue that such a book would be completely tedious. I understand that, and I don't know that I could ever do it. I may give it a shot. I'll see what happens in this my new year, my resolution for my 72nd year, to see if I can write a minimalist novel in which it's not nothing happens, it's that there's no tension, there's no highs and lows, it just flows. Don't know, and I don't know if other authors have tried it. I expect they probably have, because there's no new ideas under the sun, as the preacher Koheles says in Ecclesiastes. Anyway, that's my thought for Lent, is can we imagine a world in which there are no highs and lows? Sort of like Brave New World in a way, but more the world that I know, not the world of Aldous Huxley. So there's my thoughts for this beginning of Passion Tide. If you like my videos, please like, please subscribe. Have a good week. Maybe you'll have some highs and lows, maybe you won't. Maybe not too many lows. I hope you don't have too many of those. But if you do, then I hope you have some really high highs as well. So until Friday, have a good week.